everyone, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to another video. Today I want to share with you these easy sentiment backgrounds. The great thing about most stamp sets are you can find sentiments in them, and you don't have to use those sentiments just for sentiments. You can also use them to create some really fun backgrounds. So I am starting off with this large stamp set today. This is Saved by Grace, and I am using that block faith sentiment in this set. This is a perfect sentiment to create a background with. I love the way that when stacked together, it almost creates these brick-like blocks on your background. This background would be very easy to stamp with an acrylic block. However, it is a very solid stamp. Because of that, I'm going to go ahead and use my MISTI for stamping. It's going to take a little bit longer than just looking through your clear stamp and acrylic block and stamping down and lining up that way, but it's going to end up looking better taking that little bit of extra time and using my stamp positioner for this. So I have a color palette that I've already selected. I'm using Catherine Pooler inks today to stamp this out. You could go bright, you could go pastel, you could do just kind of an ombre look if you wanted to, you could do all one color if you wanted to. I'm going bright today. So I am starting off with Party Dress, and I've lined my stamp up. It is not perfectly aligned in that corner. I have it hanging off a little bit to the left and a little bit at the top. That's just a great way to start your projects, your backgrounds that are going to be filled up with one image. Because when you get to that bottom row, it's not going to align perfectly with the bottom of the paper. So starting off the edge of the paper is a great way to make this look more cohesive when all is said and done. My next color that I'm using is Tiki Torch. In between each color, you want to make sure that you are cleaning the stamp really, really well. I am spraying it down with my water bottle and wiping it down very well. Then you want to also make sure it's dry before you go and put it on your paper too. So take that little bit of extra time. It's going to save you a headache in the long run so you don't use your background as you're moving your stamp around. My third color I'm using is Limoncello. And because this stamp is rather long and large, it only takes about 2 to 3 stamps to fill up a row. So I'm already on my second row of stamping here. Now, once I started that second row, I came a little bit more over to the left and didn't stamp directly underneath that first one. Again, this is just going to help with the overall look of the final project. So don't stamp one right underneath the other unless that's the look you're going for. But I like to kind of stagger it a little bit. This is just going to help make it more look like bricks. My fourth color I'm using is Lime Ricky, which is a nice bright green ink. If you can tell, I'm going in a little bit of a rainbow order, but I'm using brighter colors. Then I'll give it a really good clean, and then it's time for my blue color. But I did not want to start on the left side of my paper this time. I wanted my middle stamp to be right in the center. So I switched it up and went in with a purple ink. This is the Flirty Fuchsia ink, and I am stamping that right in between where the green and the yellow meet on the row above. That's going to give me room on the left side to still stamp my blue ink, which I'll do now. And then I can go ahead and stamp on the right side as well when I get the blue and finish out that row with my Party Dress ink, which is my pink ink. But figuring out the layout of this is kind of the fun of this. It's a little bit like pattern stamping, which I love to do, but you're just using one stamp over and over again to create this really fun background. You also have that faith word in the center, so it adds that little bit of extra interest. So now I have my first rainbow all complete, so I'm just going to start over with my colors and continue on down the paper until I get it all filled up. Now eventually you are going to need to flip this paper over and kind of work from the bottom just because you're going to hit that bottom of your MISTI. But here's what it looks like all said and done. I love how bright and colorful this is. And when you stamp these inks at first, they are a little splotchy, but you can see as it dries, it settles down into the paper. So now that the background's done, it's time to finish the rest of the card. I'm going to be using the rest of the images that are in the Save by Grace stamp set. I've stamped several of them onto white cardstock with VersaFine Clair and Nocturne, and then applied some black embossing powder that has a little bit of sparkle in it. This is the New Year's Eve embossing powder from Imagine Crafts. I heat set those, and now I'm going to ink blend with the same colors that I used on the background to fill in all these different elements. So I started off with Party Dress. I'll go in with Tiki Torch and blend these onto the flowers. I'm using those bright colors aside from the green. The green I'm going to save for the leaves. Each one of these I'm also blending with my Amazon blending brushes. I'm starting darkest towards the center and working lightest as I go towards the outside. Then, when I get to the leaves, I'll pull in that Lime Ricky and go ahead and just quickly ink blend those, again using those Amazon blending brushes to do that. Now, this is the only card I'm going to show the full process for, and that's because of what comes next. I wanted to go ahead and fussy cut all of these images out and create a little bit of a bouquet in the center of my card. To do that, I also die cut a vellum oval with a die set from Cat Scrappiness. This is the zigzag oval die set, and I've kind of laid out a guide for myself of where I want all these elements to end up. Now I'm going to take some press and seal, and I'm going to press that right over that bouquet. Once I have the entire thing picked up, I can go ahead and flip this over, remove that oval, and now I've got my bouquet starting from the back towards the front stuck on there. Then I can start picking pieces off and placing them down selectively. So I'm starting off with the leaves that are in the background. I'm using foam tape to apply a lot of these embellishments. I'm going to mix it up between the foam tape for added dimension on some pieces and liquid adhesive on other pieces as well. Now here's the thing, if you're not happy with the way this looks, you can pull these up. I went ahead and pulled up a leaf that I wasn't happy with the placement, and then I put a few of the flowers down. Then I can go ahead and play with the placement of that leaf underneath the flowers. Just by lifting up a section and placing it down, you're really not ruining anything by doing that, and you're just messing around with the placement as you go. Using this method, it's a great way to work from the back of the bouquet to the front. So once I had everything down and in place, I was happy with the way it turned out. Everything was adhered down to that vellum oval, and the thing about that is it gave me a great area to put some adhesive on the back of that oval. Vellum you can see through. It's really hard to glue down unless you have something over the front of it. So I just made sure to apply that adhesive where the pieces on the front were, so they covered up that adhesive. I'm using some pretty strong adhesive here, tape adhesive, to hold this in place because all those flowers on the front get a little bit heavy, so you want to make sure they're nice and stuck down. I'm placing that oval directly in the center of my faith stamp background, and there is that nice bright card. I love the two bright colors, one on top of the other. It's not something I normally do, making a card this bright, but I love the way this one turned out. Now for my sentiment, I am going in with a sentiment from the Air of God stamp set, and it says all things are possible. I love mixing and matching different sentiments from all of these stamp sets, especially the Color by Faith series from Joy Clair Stamps. Because they're all faith-based stamps, they go really, really well together. And I love that all things are possible for you sentiment. It's great for so many things, whether it's a graduation, whether it's somebody who just needs a pick me up, or any kind of just you can do it. I did add a few little bit of black Nuvo drops to this and then attached everything to an A2 top folding card base. Now, this background of sentiments is super easy, and that is because I am using the Proverbs 31 stamp set from Joy Clair Stamps. In that stamp set, you have this nice cluster of words and sentiments all ready to go. So all I need to do is stamp that a few times right next to each other. It looks like I've spent a ton of time on it. Really, it took me about 3 stampings, and that's all it is. I went ahead and lined this up onto a piece of cardstock, and I was going to fill this entire piece of cardstock up, but I decided to just do half of it because I'm going to cut the other half off, and I didn't really want to make two of these cards. If you wanted to, you could by all means stamp a full panel and end up making two cards with this method, but I'm just going to go ahead and save that other piece that I cut off on the bottom as some scrap paper for more stamping. I am using VersaFine Clair ink to stamp this down. I'm not sure the color as I make this voiceover, but I will have all the supplies that I used. Everything will be listed and linked down in the description box below, so you can go down there and check it out. But once I had that done, I just chopped it off and added it to my finished card. Now I used the rest of the Proverbs 31 stamp set to finish this card. I colored and cut out that woman stamp, and I also added a little bit of stenciling to the top of the card. I used this "She Believes She Could, So She Did," stamped that down with some black ink, and then added clear embossing powder over that so it helped it pop out. Also, to make sure there was a little separation from the top of the card to that bottom, I added a strip of black cardstock. Very simple and easy to do. For my final card, I am going to be using the Fruit of the Spirit stamp set. This is a fun one because you have all of these different sentiments that are the exact same size and font. They're just a little bit longer depending on what the word is. But these are fun to go in an angle. Now to do this, I'm going to be using my Misty and my Creative Corners. I love to use these whenever I create angled backgrounds. What I did was just put that Creative Corners down and lined up my first row. Then, using that first row as a guide, I'm going to start building up my own cluster of words with all those different words that are in the stamp set. I'm just lining them up and then putting them down onto the lid of my Misty. Super simple. Once it's done, I can go ahead and ink this up. I'm using the Morning Mist ink from VersaFine Clair. This is a gray ink, and I'll stamp this down. Now, this is just going to be one strip. To fill up this entire background, what I'm going to do is first double stamp because whenever I'm using my Misty, I almost always double stamp whether it needs it or not. It's just kind of a habit at this point. But once I have that double stamped, I'm going to go ahead and just start moving this background up and down, left and right in my Misty, using that bar magnet to hold it in place as I move it around. I can close the lid of my Misty, not all the way, but just to get a good idea of where this stamp is going to end up and get the perfect placement so it lines up on top of what I've previously stamped. Then I can ink up my stamp again and press it down. It's that simple. You just line this up once and then move your cardstock around in your Misty until you get the entire panel filled up. Now, at a certain point, you're going to run out of a little bit of space, whether it be on the bottom of the Misty or the top. In my case, I had lined up towards the top, so I ran out of space at the top of the Misty. Just pull your cardstock out of the Misty. It actually ends up working out better because you can just use that as a little bit of a handle to push and pull your cardstock and line it up with your stamps. And it doesn't ruin the stamping at all. So just let it hang out. I mean, that's all there is to it. And then stamp it down, and then this is it. I have this entire panel that I can use. Now, I decided to go ahead and cut this in half because why not? I wanted to do that for the design of the card, but also this allows me to get two cards out of one panel. I'm just lining this up in my paper trimmer and then chopping it between two of the lines of words. That's all there is. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and create this background very quickly. I am using the Fruit of the Spirit stamp set to create this background, and I'm using all those different fruits. I'll stamp them down with some VersaFine Clair and Nocturne, and because I'm going to be placing my panel at the top of the card, I don't need to stamp all the way up the card. That's just something I wanted to keep in the video because it's something I do often. Don't do more work than you need to on your cards, especially if it's just going to be covered up. I just keep bringing my panel in to make sure that I have enough stamping on there. That's also going to save me a lot of time in coloring. And I colored all of those images with my colored pencils and blended them out with OMS. Finally, I went ahead and die cut another one of those ovals from the Zigzag Oval die set. but I die cut it from white cardstock. Then I use one of the larger sentiments from the Fruit of the Spirit stamp set and stamp that onto the oval. That panel that I had the stamping on, the sentiment stamping, I popped that up and popped up also that sentiment oval on the front too to complete this entire card. But there you have it, 3 simple ways to create sentiment backgrounds. So use your sentiments in fun new ways. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, you can do that now off to the left-hand side. Don't forget all the information down in the description box below. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and happy crafting!